And on to debate number 2. Viewers, Justice Kaul's interview yesterday on the Newshour Agenda has sparked fresh demand for justice by Kashmiri Hindus who faced persecution in the 1990s and were forced to flee the Kashmir Valley. Remember, in his judgment on the abrogation of Article 370, Justice Kaul had recommended the setting up of a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to investigate human rights violations in Jammu and Kashmir since the 1980s. He shed more light yesterday on why such a commission was needed and also responded to why older anti-Sikh riot cases have been reopened by the SC, but not the cases of persecution against Kashmiri Hindus. Let's listen in.
The suggestion I made is, well, if time has passed, there are people, aggrieved party, who have been through those incidents. It may or may not meet the test of criminality or prosecution, but certainly the acceptance of the truth via Truth and Reconciliation Commission would give solace to the people that what has happened to us is at least acknowledged. The people are not in denial about the incidents.
Right, but do you think that the Kashmiri Pandit organizations are making a fair point when they compare this with what has happened vis-a-vis violence against the Sikh community?
They may have a point. They may have a point. But, you know, criminal prosecution is dependent on a high level of availability of evidence. And that challenge, even in the Sikh riot cases, has remained whether one can get that evidence. Secondly, Delhi is a smaller territory. What happened, those people were able to actively continue to prosecute. Where evidence has not been collected, they were able to assist in that. Whether that kind of a scenario can be replicated in Kashmir or not will depend on the ability of the prosecution to gather the evidence.
After this interview, Kashmiri Hindu bodies have alleged bias in the reopening of the cases of crimes against Kashmiri Pandits and raised serious questions about the commitment towards justice as far as the judiciary is concerned. Listen in.
The recent acknowledgement of Justice Kaul 2 times now that Kashmiri Pandits have a point on their petition being dismissed. It highlights the apathy of the judicial system of this country, which refuses to take a suo motu cognizance on probably one of the biggest ethnic cleansings that have happened post-independence.
The demand by Kashmiri Pandits has triggered a political war. While the BJP is backed their demand, the PDP says that if any inquiry is to happen, it must look into events all the way back to 1947 onwards and not just 1991.
जस्टिस कौल साहब जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जज हैं, उन्होंने बिल्कुल ठीक बोला कि हम लोगों को इसका संज्ञान लेना चाहिए। ये चिंता का विषय है। समय रहते हुए जो नरसंहार कश्मीरी भाइयों से हुआ है, वहां बहनों से हुआ है, उसके ऊपर पूरी एक इन्वेस्टिगेशन होनी चाहिए। उसके बाद कार्रवाई भी करनी चाहिए।
रिकंसिलिएशन कमीशन में ये समझना है कि ये ट्रुथ जो है ये शुरू कहां से होगा, ये ट्रुथ बोलेगा कौन। ट्रुथ तो बोलना है, लेकिन ट्रुथ बोलना है 1988 से नहीं, 1947 से लेके आज तक की सच्चाई बतानी है। अगर आप हिंदू मुस्लिम के बीच का जो ये वॉइड है, जो ये दूरियां हैं, इसको खत्म करनी है तो फिर तो 1947 से ही ट्रुथ एंड रिकंसिलिएशन शुरू होना चाहिए।
You're watching the News Hour at 10, debate number 2 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
And for more on this, let's go across to our guest. Joining us, Sushil Pandit, activist, is with us. Advocate Neelofar, leader of the National Conference, joins us. Irfan Hafiz Loan is lawyer of the DDC. Guru Prakash, national spokesperson of the BJP, continues to be with us. Sushil Pandit, your first response to what Justice Kaul has said.
Madhav, the problem is truth and reconciliation is a bit of an obfuscation. What truth or reconciliation may have meaning when there is no justice, and no justice after 3.5 decades? What will truth and reconciliation do to those who were massacred, who were raped, who were abducted, who were murdered, whose houses were taken away and who were thrown out of the valley, lock, stock and barrel, 35 years ago with nowhere to go? Truth and reconciliation with whom? You have to have at least some remorse. Here people are in denial. So
But
I don't
Mr.
think
Pandit,
we have adequately addressed this issue.
Yeah, but he says, I'm just quoting him.
Justice.
I'm just quoting him.
Basic prerequisite.
Yeah, what Justice Kaul is saying is that unlike in the Sikh rights case, which is in a limited
cannot
area
move
of the
further on.
geography of Delhi, that's not the case in Jammu and Kashmir. In this case, there was evidence available, and that's why the SIT was ordered. That's what he has said. In this particular case, gathering that evidence
Madhav, there is
would be
not even
quite
an
difficult.
acknowledgement of the fact as to what happened to us. There was a genocide committed on us, and we are still treated as migrants.
Okay, Advocate Nilofer, would you like to respond to that? No justice for the genocide that was conducted on Kashmiri Pandits, says Sushil Pandit. Your response to him?
I would agree with the genocide word. In fact, there have been Muslims also who have been killed. In fact, the people from the Sikh community also. We cannot say that it is only one community which was targeted. And if there is a clear-cut direction from the Honorable Supreme Court that there should be some reconciliation commission should come up. We have been always advocating as a National Conference Party. They have been always advocating for the establishment of that commission. Let it be established. And in fact,
But why didn't you do it when you were in power? Why did you never do it when you were in power, ma'am?
Because I'm not able to listen you. Please.
I'm asking you, if you were in favor of this commission, why didn't you ever institute it when the National Conference was in power through the 90s and early 2000s?
In fact, these voices never raised before. It raised it. In fact, it gained momentous after 2019 mostly. So we are not denying about it that there has been violations, human rights violations, but not particularly to one religion also. There have been people from the other religions also that who have been victimized in the name of the rights, in the name of some...
Sushil Pandit, not right to say that this was genocide. We've been through this debate before, but since she has raised the point, please respond to her.
There is pervasive sense of distrust.
No, this is bland denial, Madhav. She is refused. This is absolute denial. This is brazen denial. We have been completely cleansed of the valley. We have been driven out. You tell me, have Muslims been cleansed from the valley? Not even 1% of the Muslim population was driven out of the valley. 99.9% of Hindus were driven out of the valley. Is there a comparison?
You cannot,
or do you want to dilute this issue by obfuscating, by conjuring up something which is absolutely untenable and incomparable? This is why we say that there is no room for truth and reconciliation, because on the other hand, you have complete denial. In the face of such hypocrisy and insincerity, you can't even begin with reconciliation.
There's no comparing the two. Kashmiri Pandits even today face death threats. There are attacks taking place on them, and they've virtually been forced out of the valley. So there's no comparing what's happened to them with others.
Kashmiri Pandits, it is also the Muslims who are facing these threats.
Yes,
and
but they haven't been forced out of the valley, ma'am. That's the point he's making.
SSP in the Gantmula was killed. He was not. He was neither migrant, neither he was Hindu. He was Muslim. He was targeted.
But ma'am,
just give us
anytime. But the way in which Kashmiri Pandits have been targeted, clearly the fact that they had to leave the valley, does that not mean anything to you?
Who is responsible for that? Let the truth come up. Who is responsible for that? We too are supporting it. We too are saying that truth has to surface and let it surface.
Guru Prakash, who is responsible for that? The Truth and Reconciliation Commission can establish. Let's wait for that.
Let it be
after 3 decades.
No, I think Madhav, I think the real stakeholder, neither myself nor Advocate Nilofer, I don't find neither of us qualified to speak enough on this issue as Mr. Sushil Pandit is. So Mr. Sushil Pandit and his family, his community has been the most relevant stakeholder of us all who all are present in the panel. But as a political party representative, I can convey one simple point that since 1952, our inspiration, Dr. Shyama Prasad Mukherjee said, and the abrogation of Article 370 by the government, the constitutional abrogation of Article 370. For us, Kashmir and Kashmiris, they are not a matter of politics, but a matter of commitment. And this has been displayed over the last 10 years. look at the vision of Naya Kashmir by the Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. AIMS, NIT, the Delimitation Commission, the investment, the DDC polls for that matter. We saw a large number of people coming out and participating in the DDC polls. There are definitely some issues with respect to 1990 Exodus, the 1990 genocide, and the problem of radical Islamic fundamentalism. There is absolutely no denial of that. But there are forces within Kashmir even today. Even today, there are political stakeholders, there are political families who are famously or infamously known as the Gupkar Alliance. The Gupkar Alliance think that Kashmir is the sole property of one family or two families, but that is no longer the case today. What has happened since August 2019 and what is happening till today, the vision of Naya Kashmir, the idea of Naya Kashmir, then the mainstream development, the infrastructure investment, we are definitely going to see some major development in this regard as well.
Irfan Hafiz Loan, I want you to comment on that. The fact is that all the ruling parties of the Kashmir Valley, the local political parties there, the families as Guru Prakash calls them, whatever one chooses to call them, at the end of the day, they have presided over a situation where there has been absolutely no justice for Kashmiri Hindus for 3 decades. And that is a shocking tragedy of what has transpired, Irfan Hafiz Loan. There seems to be no end in sight.
I hope you won't interrupt. Just give me a minute. What Justice Kaul says, he says the Valley of Kashmir carries historical burden. They carried burden as a victim of conflict since several decades. And he says it requires investigation. It requires a report to be submitted for the brazen human rights violation by the state and non-state actors. It means a lot. Madhav, just remember that who didn't suffer in Kashmir? We all are victims, irrespective of caste, color, creed. We have our Kashmiri Pandits compelled to leave the valley, one of the brazen violation. But what about Sopore massacre? What about Gaukadal massacre? And yesterday before, what happened in Rajouri? आपने देखा वो वीडियो? किस तरीके से निर्दोष सिविलियंस को पिटाई करके उनकी हत्या कर दी? हम चाहते हैं हमारे कश्मीरी पंडित भाइयों के साथ इंसाफ हो. वो जाति थी, वो ब्रेजन वायलेशन थी. लेकिन उसके साथ साथ जैसे रिकमेंड किया गया है,
सुशील पंडित,
स्टेट एंड द नॉन स्टेट एक्टर्स, this means a lot.
I want Sushil Pandit to respond to you. Sushil Pandit.
Why this means state and non-state actors? It conveys a message.
This is disingenuous. Whenever we talk about our tragedy, जब हमने अपने विध्वंस की, जातीय विध्वंस की, हमारी नस्ल कुशी की बात की है, तब आपने किसी दूसरी, तीसरी, चौथी ट्रेजेडी को उसके समानांतर, उसके पैरेलल लाके खड़ा करके इशू को डाइल्यूट करने की कोशिश की है. You cannot play one tragedy against the other. You cannot play one incident against the other. There have been human rights violations, but can you compare it with 500,000 people pushed out of the valley through massacres, murders, rapes and abductions, singled out just because of their identity in a religious fashion? Well, unfortunately, community, just because they were Hindus.
Unfortunately, Sushil Pandit, the tragedy is that the end and the justice at the moment at least does not appear to be anywhere in sight. There was a lot of hope from the apex court as well, but certainly at this point of time, many cases where the final and the logical end has not been reached is what many believe is the tragedy of the situation in Jammu and Kashmir. It has been the situation for the past 3 decades and unfortunately continues to remain pretty much so. We'll have to leave it there. Completely out of time. Guru Prakash, Sushil Pandit, Advocate Nilofer, Irfan Hafiz Loan, thanks so much for joining us this evening.